Come closer for a second. I'm going to say this quietly, because it isn't the kind of thing you shout. There is something on you that other people can feel before you say a word. You've watched it happen your whole life. You walk into a room and the temperature of that room changes. Conversations shift. Somebody gets quiet. Somebody else gets loud in a way that doesn't fit. And you go home that night and you replay it and you think, what did I do? What did I say? You didn't do anything. You didn't say anything. You just walked in carrying something you never asked for and never learned how to put down. And I need you to hear me right now, chosen one, because this is the part almost nobody tells you. That thing on you is not a curse. It is not a personality flaw. It is not you being too sensitive or too much or too intense. It is a signature. It was written on you. And it's the reason certain people can't sit comfortably in the same space as you, and the reason certain other people find you from across a crowded room and start telling you their whole life inside of 5 minutes. My name is George, and I've been walking with people who carry this signature for a long time now. I've sat across kitchen tables from them at 11 at night. I've stood in hospital hallways with them. And I've watched almost every single one of them make the same mistake, a mistake I made myself for years. And that mistake is what I want to take apart with you today. Piece by piece, until there's nothing left of it. Because you've been told a lie about what to do with what you carry. And that lie has cost you more than you know. Let me name the lie first, so you can see it clearly. The lie says, if you have something real, you should use it. Show it. Prove it. Answer every person who challenges it. Defend it when it's mocked. Explain it when it's questioned. Step forward when someone provokes it. That's the lie. And it sounds so reasonable that most people never even examine it. Of course you'd defend what's true. Of course you'd answer someone who comes at you. Of course you'd prove yourself when somebody says you're imagining things. But here's what I've watched happen, over and over, in the lives of people carrying exactly what you carry. They engage. And the engaging drains them dry. I want to give you an image, and I want you to hold on to it for the next 40 minutes, because we're going to come back to it more than once. Picture a key, a real one, heavy, old, the kind with actual teeth cut into it. That key opens a specific door. It was made for that door, and no other. Now picture that key sitting in the wrong hand, somebody who doesn't know what it opens, doesn't know what's behind the door, doesn't even know it's a key. To them, it's just a piece of metal. They'll use it to scrape paint off a windowsill. They'll use it to pry open a paint can. They'll drop it in a drawer and forget it. And every time they use it wrong, the teeth wear down a little more. That key is what you carry. And every time you hand it to someone who doesn't recognize it, you let them wear down the teeth. That is what engaging costs you. Not your feelings, not your pride, your edge, the precision of the thing, the part that actually fits the lock. Now let me tell you about a man who spent a very long time thinking he had nothing in his hand at all. His name was Gideon. And when we meet him, he is beating out wheat in a wine press. I want you to understand what that means, because it's easy to read past it. A wine press is a pit. It's below ground level. You don't thresh wheat in a pit, you thresh wheat up high, on a threshing floor, where the wind can catch the chaff and carry it off. That's the whole point. You need the open air. Gideon was doing it in a hole in the ground, because he was hiding. The enemy was in the land, and if they saw the wheat, they'd take the wheat. So this grown man was crouched in a pit doing a job wrong, badly, inefficiently, because doing it right would have gotten him seen. And that's when the angel of the Lord shows up and says, "The Lord is with you, mighty man of valor." mighty man of valor, to a man in a hole, hiding, and Gideon does what every single one of us does. He argues. He says, if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened? Where are the miracles our fathers told us about? He says, my clan is the weakest, and I am the least in my father's house. He had a key in his hand, and he was using it to scrape at grain in a pit. He didn't know what he was holding, and more than that, he was in a season where he was hidden on purpose. And he read the hiddenness as abandonment. Hold that. We're coming back to him. So let's take the lie apart. The first piece of it is this. You believe that when someone challenges what's on you, silence means you've lost. You felt this. Somebody says something dismissive about your faith, about what you sense, about the thing you said would happen, that did happen. And there's this hot rush up through your chest, and this voice in you that says, say something. Because if you don't say something, they win. If you don't say something, they'll think they were right about you. Let me ask you something. Since when did heaven need you to win an argument at a dinner table? I sat with a woman a few years back, I'll call her Denise, in the church kitchen on a Tuesday afternoon. Nobody else in the building. The good coffee gone, and only the bad coffee left. And she was shaking. Not crying, shaking, because her brother-in-law had spent 40 minutes at Sunday dinner picking apart everything she believed, in front of her kids. And she had sat there and said almost nothing. And she came to me convinced she had failed God. I asked her one question. I said, Denise, what happened in you while he talked? And she went quiet for a long time. And then she said, I prayed for him. The whole time. I sat there and I prayed for him, and I didn't know why. I said, then you didn't fail. You did the only thing that was actually available to you in that room. He wanted a fight, because a fight is a thing he knows how to have. You gave him something he had no category for, and he's going to feel that for months. She looked at me like I'd handed her air. Because here's what she'd never been taught. Silence is not surrender. Silence is a decision about where your power goes. When you engage, your power goes into the argument. When you don't, it stays in you, and heaven decides where it goes instead. That's the first piece of the lie coming off. Not answering is not losing. Second piece, and this one is heavier. You believe that if you don't engage, you're being unloving. This one has kept more chosen ones in bondage than almost anything I know. Because you are by design a person who feels things for other people. You carry their weight without being asked. You know when they're lying about being fine. You pick up their sorrow in a grocery aisle at 11 at night from 3 feet away, and you don't even know their name. So when someone comes at you hostile, mocking, provoking, your instinct isn't to fight. Your instinct is to fix them. To explain until they understand. To stay in the conversation until something in them softens. And you stay. And you stay. And you stay. And meanwhile, the teeth of the key wear down. Listen to me. There is a kind of person who does not come to you to be helped. They come to you to be fed. They have found that being near you produces a reaction in them, an energy, a heat, a sense of being alive, and they will provoke you specifically to get it. They don't know they're doing it. Most of them genuinely don't. But the pattern is real, and you have lived it. You've had that friend who only calls in crisis, who never asks how you are, who leaves the conversation lighter and leaves you flattened on the couch for 2 days. That is not a relationship. That's a transfer. And walking away from a transfer is not unloving. It's the most honest thing you can do for you and for them. Because as long as they can get from you what they should be getting from God, they will never go get it from God. Your availability becomes the thing that keeps them from the source. Read that again if you need to. Your constant availability may be the exact obstacle between someone you love and the healing they need. I watched this play out with a man in my congregation, a mechanic. Worked out of a two-bay shop off the highway. Hands permanently stained no matter how hard he scrubbed. Good man. The kind of man who fixes your alternator and then can't bring himself to charge you for it because he heard your wife's been sick. He had a cousin, and that cousin had been in some version of crisis for 19 years. Money, women, addiction, a business that never quite started. And every time it collapsed, the phone rang in that shop, and this man dropped what he was doing and drove. He told me once, standing in the bay with a rag in his hands and the door open to the cold, that he had a system. He said, "I keep $300 in the glove box, always, because I know he's going to call." $300 in a glove box. For 19 years. And I asked him gently, because I loved him, "What do you think would happen if the money wasn't there?" He didn't answer for a long time. Then he said, "I think he'd finally have to go to God." He knew. He'd known for years. He just couldn't bear to be the one who let go first. 6 months later, he stopped answering. Hardest thing he ever did. He told me harder than burying his own father. He sat in that shop with the phone buzzing on the workbench, and he did not pick it up, and he wept while it buzzed. 14 months after that, his cousin got sober. Not because of a program, because he ran out of glove boxes. That mechanic had been holding a key against a door that was never his to open. And the moment he stopped forcing it, the door opened from the other side. Now, third piece. And I want you to sit with this one. You believe that the hiddenness is a delay. You've been in a season, maybe you're in it right now, where nothing is visible. Nothing is confirmed. You're doing what you know to do and no one is watching, and no fruit is showing. And you have started to wonder if you imagined the whole thing. And the enemy of your soul comes in that season, and he says one word: proof. Show them. Post it. Say it out loud. Do the thing that gets a reaction, so you can feel like it's real again. And that is exactly the trap. Because you're being asked to spend the key on the wrong door just to hear a lock click. Come back to Gideon with me. After the angel calls him a mighty man of valor, Gideon doesn't march out and raise an army. The first thing God tells him to do is tear down his father's altar to Baal in his own family's yard, his own father's idol. And Gideon does it at night, because he was afraid of his father's household and the men of the city. He obeyed in the dark. I want you to feel how ordinary that is. This isn't the trumpet-blowing, torch-smashing Gideon of the flannel graph. This is a scared man doing the right thing at 2 in the morning, when nobody can see him, hoping it doesn't blow back on him by sunrise. And God didn't rebuke him for it. God didn't say, "Do it in the daylight or it doesn't count," because the obedience counted. The visibility didn't. Chosen one, that's your season. You are doing the thing at 2 in the morning. Nobody is applauding. Nobody knows. And you keep wondering when the confirmation comes. The confirmation comes, but it comes after the obedience, not before it. And the reason it comes late is that if it came early, you'd start performing for the crowd instead of for God. Let me tell you what the signature actually is. I've watched people try to name it 100 different ways. They call it intuition. They call it being an empath. They pick up strange words for it in books and podcasts, and they wear them like coats that don't fit. Here's what it is. In the plainest language I have, it's the residue of being called before you were formed. There are people God set apart before they took a breath. He knew what he was going to ask them to carry. And he built the carrying capacity in first. That capacity doesn't sit dormant until the assignment comes. It's active from childhood. It leaks. It shows up as a 5-year-old who cries at things other 5-year-olds don't notice. As a teenager who can't stand crowds, but ends up as the person everyone confesses to. As an adult who walks into a house and knows within 4 seconds what's wrong in that marriage. That's not a gift you developed. That's a residue of what was decided about you before you arrived. And residue has a scent. Both directions. The people running toward the light smell it and move toward you without knowing why. The people running from it smell it and get agitated and can't tell you why either. Same signature. Opposite reactions. Which is why the warning in this "don't engage" isn't about being cold. It's about understanding that some reactions to you aren't about you at all. They're about what's on you. And you can't argue somebody out of a reaction to a signature they can't see. I want to stop here for a second, because I think you might need this more than you need the next point. If something in you has been sitting up and paying attention while I talk, if there's been a warmth or a pressure or an ache in your chest that showed up somewhere in the last few minutes, I want you to notice it and not talk yourself out of it. That's not the video. That's the Spirit putting His hand on something in you that already knew. What you just experienced was not content. It was a mirror, and mirrors demand a decision. If you are ready to go to the root, to finally understand why you think, feel, and perceive differently from everyone around you, the secret protocol carries the 7 keys that reveal what God placed inside you before you ever drew your first breath. Full audiobook included for every moment of your day. Plus, the Awakening Map as a bonus, the 5 stages of spiritual awakening, mapped with clarity, showing where you are right now and what the Spirit is releasing in this season. Link pinned in the first comment. Not for much longer. And you did not make it to the end without a reason. I don't say that as a salesman. I say it as a man who spent 11 years scraping paint with a key. Now let's finish taking the lie apart. Because there's a 4th piece, and it's the one underneath all the others. You believe that if you don't engage, you'll disappear. That's the real fear. Say it plainly and it loses some of its grip. You're afraid that if you stop defending, stop explaining, stop showing up in every conversation where you're mentioned, you'll just be forgotten. That the people who misunderstood you will get the last word forever. That your name will settle into the shape they made for it. I understand that fear. I've had it. There was a season in my life where I was talked about in rooms I wasn't in, and I knew it. And I could not do a single thing about it, except keep getting up in the morning. You want to know what I learned in that season? Nobody's version of you outlives God's version of you. They can say what they want. They can build a whole story about you and tell it at family gatherings for a decade. It does not change one letter of what's written about you in heaven. And here's the harder truth. Their version was never going to be corrected by your explanation anyway. People don't release a story about you because you presented better evidence. They release it when God does something in their life that makes the story unnecessary. You can't do that part. Stop trying to do that part. And I'll tell you what I noticed on the other side of that season. The people whose opinion of me I'd been fighting for, most of them, had stopped thinking about me entirely within a year. The story they told didn't outlive their interest in telling it. I had spent months defending myself against a thing that was already dissolving without my help. Meanwhile, the people who mattered, the ones who'd actually watched my life up close, never needed the defense in the first place. They already knew. They were never the audience for my explaining. They were just waiting for me to stop, so we could talk about something real again. That's usually how it goes. You explain yourself to strangers while the ones who love you stand there holding the door. Back to the winepress one more time. After Gideon tore down the altar, the men of the city came for him in the morning. They wanted him dead. And his father, the same father whose idol he'd just destroyed, stood in front of the crowd and said something extraordinary. He said, "If Baal is a god, let him contend for himself. Let him contend for himself." His father defended him. The man Gideon was most afraid of became the one who stood between him and the mob. Gideon didn't arrange that. He couldn't have. He obeyed in the dark, and the defense showed up in the daylight from the direction he least expected. That's what happens when you stop engaging. Defense comes, but it comes from a direction you didn't plan and couldn't have manufactured, and it arrives with an authority your own words never would have had. If Gideon had spent that night rehearsing his argument for the morning, he'd have been standing there arguing when his father spoke, and his own voice would have muddied it. Instead, he was silent, and the silence left room for someone else to speak. Your silence leaves room. That's the whole mechanic of it. As long as you're filling the space with your own defense, nothing else can occupy it. So what do you actually do? Because I don't want to leave you with a warning and no road. First, learn the difference between a question and a provocation. They can sound identical. Same words even. The difference is in what happens after you answer. A question receives. A provocation deflects and comes back sharper. You'll know within about 2 exchanges which one you're in. And the moment you know it's a provocation, you're free. Not obligated. Free. Second, stop treating your reaction as evidence. Just because something in you flared up doesn't mean you were supposed to act on it. That flare is information, not instruction. It tells you something is happening in the room. It does not tell you what to do about it. Most of the time the answer is nothing out loud. Anyway, pray in the room. Bless in the room. Say nothing in the room. Third, guard the entrance, not just the exit. You've gotten good at recovering from draining encounters. Sleep it off. Pray it off. Take a day. But recovery is expensive. It's cheaper to not enter. And you already know, usually before you walk in the door, which encounters are going to cost you. You've just been overriding that knowing, because you thought overriding it was what love required. It isn't. Fourth, find the 2 or 3, not the 20, not the church. 2 or 3 people who can hold what you carry without needing to consume it or explain it away. That's all you need. That's all anybody has ever needed. Jesus took 3 up the mountain, not 12. I want to tell you one more thing before we close, and then I'm going to ask you something. The key in your hand, the one with the teeth still on it, the one you've been scraping paint with it, opens a door you have not seen yet. That's why you can't identify the lock. That's why nothing in your current life quite fits it. You keep testing it against every door in front of you, and none of them turn. And you conclude the key is broken. The key isn't broken. You're standing in the wrong hallway. And you're standing in the wrong hallway because you're not supposed to be in the right one yet. Gideon, in the winepress, could not have used what he was carrying. Not there. Not then. The pit wasn't the place. But God named him for what he'd be, not what he was doing. And that naming came while he was still in the hole, still hiding, still doing the job wrong. He said, "Mighty man of valor," to a man crouched in the dark with grain in his hands. He is saying something over you right now that does not match your Tuesday, and your Tuesday is not the argument against it. Your Tuesday is the winepress. Stop scraping. Stop handing the key to people who think it's a piece of metal. Stop spending the teeth on doors that were never yours. Hold it. Keep the edge on it. Wait for the hallway. Now here's what I want from you. And I want you to actually do it, not just think about doing it. In the comments below, tell me about the last time you walked away from something you would normally have engaged with. Not a big dramatic thing, a small one. A text you didn't answer. A comment at a dinner table you let sit. A conversation you didn't chase down. Tell me what it was, and tell me what you felt in the hours after, because I've noticed something in the people who carry this, and I want to see if it's true for you too. The walking away always feels like failure for about 6 hours, and then it turns into something else entirely. I read these. I want to know what your 6 hours felt like. And when you get to the end of writing it, notice this: you're still holding the key. Nobody took it. The teeth are still sharp. And somewhere ahead of you, in a hallway you haven't walked into yet, there is a door that has been locked since before you were born, waiting on the one hand that was made to open it. Keep it clean. Keep it quiet. It's almost time.